Imagine sitting at a piano, never having taken a single formal lesson, yet creating melodies so unique they leave the world in awe. Sounds impossible? Not for Erroll Garner. This self-taught genius didn't just play jazz, he reshaped its rhythm, giving swing a whole new feel. His unmatched technique, joyful energy, and ability to make the piano sing set him apart. But how did a musician with no ability to read sheet music become one of the greatest in history? Stick around, because his story is anything but ordinary. Erroll Louis Garner was born on June 15, 1921, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Known simply as Erroll Garner, he would grow up to become one of jazz's most unique pianists. But long before he played for sold-out crowds, he was just a small kid with an oversized love for music. Unlike most prodigies, Erroll never learned to read sheet music. Instead, he played everything by ear, a gift that became clear when he started imitating songs on the family piano at just 3 years old. His older brother, Linton, was also a pianist, and some say that watching him play was what first sparked Erroll's obsession with the instrument. By the age of 7, while other kids were outside playing, Erroll was already entertaining neighbors with tunes he had picked up from the radio. There's even a story that he once snuck into his brother's rehearsals just to absorb every note. Without any formal training, his fingers danced across the keys, as if the music was already inside him, waiting to be played. His natural ability didn't go unnoticed. One of his early influences was local musician Earl Hines, another Pittsburgh-born pianist who made waves in jazz. Erroll would listen to Hines's radio performances and then sit at the piano, effortlessly recreating what he had heard, often adding his own unexpected twists. It was clear from an early age, Erroll wasn't just another piano player. He was something else entirely. But how did he take this raw talent and turn it into a career that would shake up the jazz world? That's where things get even more interesting. By the time Erroll Garner hit his teenage years, his talent was impossible to ignore. But the real turning point came in the early 1940s when he moved to New York City. It was there, in the heart of the jazz scene, that his career took off. Playing in small clubs, he quickly built a reputation as a pianist who didn't just play, he made the piano come alive. His big break arrived in 1944 when he recorded alongside Charlie Parker, one of jazz's most influential figures. Sharing the studio with Parker gave Erroll exposure, and soon his name was on everyone's radar. Unlike many musicians of his time, Erroll had no formal mentors in the traditional sense, but he drew inspiration from those he admired. He had grown up listening to Earl Hines, whose rhythmic innovation left a lasting mark on his style. But what set Erroll apart wasn't just who he listened to. It was how he absorbed everything and reshaped it into something uniquely his own. Breaking into the jazz world wasn't easy, especially for someone who played by ear. In an era where reading sheet music was considered essential, many doubted Erroll's abilities. Some critics dismissed him, claiming he couldn't be taken seriously as a musician. But he didn't just prove them wrong, he made their standards irrelevant. His ability to improvise complex arrangements with no written notes in front of him baffled trained musicians. Even legendary orchestras had to adjust when performing with him, since he often changed tempo and phrasing on a whim. One of his first recordings to leave audiences stunned was Laura, 1945. It wasn't just the technical brilliance that caught people's attention. It was the feeling behind every note. His signature swing, unpredictable flourishes, and the way he seemed to sing through the piano set him apart. From that moment on, Erroll Garner wasn't just another jazz pianist. He was a force that couldn't be ignored, but his true masterpiece was still to come. And when it arrived, it would change jazz forever. In 1954, Garner composed Misty, first recording it in 1955 for the album Contrasts. Lyrics were later added by Johnny Burke. Misty quickly became popular, both as a jazz standard and as Johnny Mathis's signature song. In the last years of Erroll Garner's life, his health began to decline, but his musical spirit remained as vibrant as ever. Despite the struggles with his health, including a heart condition that eventually led to his passing, he continued to perform and record with the same passion that had defined his career. He remained a beloved figure in jazz, known for his tireless work ethic and the sheer joy he brought to his music, even when faced with personal challenges. One of the more unusual aspects of his later life was his decision to retreat from the limelight somewhat. In the 1970s, he slowed down his public performances, focusing more on recording and smaller, intimate appearances. It wasn't a sign of fading brilliance, but rather a choice to remain deeply connected to the music he loved. Many saw this period as a time of quiet reflection, where Erroll was still refining his sound without the pressures of constant touring. However, the end came suddenly on January 2nd, 1977. He passed away at the age of 55, leaving behind a world of music that would continue to inspire. Some speculated that the cause of death was related to the heart issues he had faced for years, but it was never confirmed. In fact, there was some mystery surrounding the exact circumstances of his passing, as his death was a shock to many who hadn't realized just how ill he had been. The news of Erroll Garner's death hit the jazz community hard. His peers, many of whom had worked alongside him or admired his work, were quick to express their grief. The world of jazz lost a true innovator, someone who had made it more vibrant and accessible, but also someone who had taught future generations of musicians to never limit themselves creatively. While he may have left this world too soon, his influence continues to be felt. His unique style, joyful energy, and ability to transform jazz into something deeply personal will always be remembered. The loss of Erroll Garner was more than the passing of a great musician. It was the closing of a chapter in jazz that would never be fully replicated. Erroll Garner's music wasn't just about technical skill, it was about emotion. His ability to make the piano sing connected with people in a way few artists could. In his time, jazz was evolving rapidly, with many musicians chasing complexity and innovation. But Erroll brought something different: pure joy. His performances felt spontaneous, full of warmth, and completely unpredictable. Audiences didn't just listen, they felt every note. Even in the most intricate pieces, there was a sense of playfulness, a reminder that music should be as enjoyable as it is expressive. His influence didn't stop when he left the stage. Many pianists, including Oscar Peterson and Ahmad Jamal, admired his dynamic playing style and his unique ability to shape rhythm and harmony in unexpected ways. His signature technique, playing slightly behind the beat while keeping a strong left-hand pulse, became a signature element in jazz piano. Even outside of jazz, his approach to melody and phrasing influenced artists in blues, rock, and classical music. One of the most striking examples of his influence can be seen in Dave Brubeck, another jazz legend. Brubeck once mentioned how Erroll's use of rhythm and his ability to reshape melodies in real time pushed him to think differently about improvisation. But perhaps the greatest testament to Erroll's brilliance is how his most famous composition, Misty, became a global standard. Originally written as a piano piece, it took on a life of its own, covered by countless artists, from Sarah Vaughan to Johnny Mathis. The song's timeless appeal proves that great music doesn't belong to just one era. It keeps evolving with each generation. Even today, musicians study his recordings not just for the technical mastery, but for the feeling behind them. His music reminds us that true artistry isn't just about precision. It's about emotion, about making something deeply personal and sharing it with the world. In a time when music is often polished and calculated, Erroll's free-flowing, heartfelt style is a reminder that sometimes the most powerful performances come from simply sitting down and letting the music lead the way. If music is meant to make us feel something beyond words, then what is it about Erroll Garner's sound that still speaks to us decades later? Erroll Garner didn't just play the piano, he told stories with it. His music was unpredictable, yet comforting, full of energy, but always intimate. He created something that wasn't bound by trends or time, a style so unique that even today, musicians and listeners still try to understand how he did it. His hands danced across the keys in a way that seemed effortless, yet no one has ever truly been able to replicate his touch. That's the magic of real artistry. It doesn't fade, it doesn't belong to one moment, and it never loses its meaning. So the real question is, if one musician could leave this kind of mark on the world, how many others have we yet to truly appreciate? If this made you think, if you love music that speaks beyond the notes, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. There's so much more to discover, and I'd love for you to be part of it.